Hello Year 10. Before you do today's lesson, you need to spend a few moments looking back at your work from last week on the Exoduster movement. So you need to understand the push and pull factors that made African Americans go out west, and you also need to pay special attention to the consequences for African Americans. So you'll remember you completed a little table to that effect, so you need to look over that. Once you've done that, you need to just put a heading in your books. The heading is explain 2 consequences of the Exoduster movement. And remember, the answer booklet in the exam will indicate how much you need to write for this type of answer. The better answers will be concise, relevant, and focused on the question. And if you look at my example on screen, you can see that the examiner just gives you space to write at the most a developed paragraph per consequence. And remember, the examiner designs the paper for all types of handwriting, so you don't or shouldn't feel the need to fill the page during the exam. Certainly, if you've got small handwriting, you'll probably have a couple of lines left over. Okay, so you probably need to pause the video and put the title in now, but make sure that you've reviewed last lesson's work. Okay, we're now going to introduce the mark scheme for the consequence question. And the first thing I'm going to do is highlight what you should avoid on this answer. So for level 1, which are the weaker responses, you need to certainly avoid simple comments or very generalized comments about the consequence. That needs to be avoided. And also, you need to put in or avoid generalized information about the topic. So to avoid an answer that gets marked 1 and 2, you've got to really explain a consequence, and you've got to be really avoiding any general information. To get the full marks, obviously, you need analysis to explain the consequence, and you need lots of specific, detailed information to support and back up your explanation. And throughout, you need to show good knowledge of the topic, in this instance, the Exodusters. So what I need you to do, obviously, is just underneath where you've got your question title, you should now be able to write a few sentences on the do's and don'ts on this question. So you might start it, to get full marks on question 1, I need to do the following, and then perhaps look at the level 2 criteria that we've highlighted in blue, and then a second sentence, and I need to avoid doing the following, and perhaps look at the stuff we've highlighted in yellow. So pause the video and just spend a second or two writing yourself a summary of what you need to do to score on this question and what you need to avoid doing if you want to avoid getting a mark in level 1. Okay, so on to the write-up phase of our question. You should have already looked back at your work and looked at task 2 from last lesson. So you should understand that there were 3 consequences for African Americans of the Exoduster movement. That is, they faced poverty, they faced racism, and obviously there was a narrative of what happened to them at the end. So in this question, explain 2 consequences of the Exoduster movement, you've got to follow stages. So step 1, you need to state the first consequence. So the most obvious consequence we can begin with is that of poverty. So I would start with a clear statement to the examiner. One consequence of the Exoduster movement was that it led to African Americans experiencing poverty. Once I've made that statement, I can start to move to step 2, where I can explain the consequence, supporting it with my own knowledge, and I can link back. So words and phrases and connectives I might use. So this was because, and then I can pull out my evidence about why African Americans faced poverty when they moved to the West. And then obviously once I've explored that explanation, I can link back. Therefore, a significant consequence of the Exoduster movement was the poverty that African Americans were put into as a result of that movement west. Once I've done that, I then need to move to a second consequence. And again, I can choose one of two here. I can talk about the racism in the USA that the Exoduster movement revealed, and I can obviously explain using my precise evidence from my table just how that was displayed, and I can link back. So success in this answer will be one clearly explained consequence to do with poverty with lots of supporting detail and explanation and a link back, and then a second consequence explained perhaps to do with how the Exoduster movement revealed racism in the West, again with lots of evidence. So you need to pause the video now, and you need to obviously have last lesson's work to hand, and you need to construct two clear paragraphs following the structure recommended for this answer. Okay, pause the video, year 10, well done. Okay, this is the final stage. So this is a process of self-assessment. So you should now have two extended paragraphs covering two consequences of the Exoduster movement. All you need to do now is level your work. So you need to give each consequence a separate mark. So you get 2 marks each out of 4. So read your first consequence and decide whether you've got lots of specific information about the topic. If so, you can start to think about level 2, but that's also got to be combined with clear explanation. So we're looking for those analysis words. Therefore, this led to, as a result, because. If your answer's packed full of those, you can again think, yes, there's explanation there. And as long as you've got clear explanation and specific information about the period, showing good knowledge, you can probably give yourself 3 to 4 marks, which is very good. So just do that, and at the end, just give yourself a sentence or two justifying your mark. So if you've given yourself 2 lots of 4 out of 4, you need a what went well to explain and justify why you've given yourself that grade. Okay, once you've done that, upload your work that's been self-assessed and I can review it. Well done, year 10. That's today's task.